Welcome, everyone, to the Greener Hub webinar series. My name is Evelyn Zuniga, and I am one of the communications officers for the Greener Hub project. The Greener Hub project officially started in September 22 as a coordination and support action of the European Commission under the Horizon Europe program, and it currently represents 15 networks in the field of agri-food and biotechnology. We started this Breakfast Club series last year in October, and the topic of our first series was circularity in agriculture. So if you're interested in topics related to mixed farming systems, mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions, sustainable farming, and circular food systems, all our recordings are now in YouTube. Our second series, the one that we just finished 2 weeks ago, it was focused on biotechnology to advance sustainable solutions for bioeconomy, and we had presentations related to plastic degradation using different microorganisms, production of chemicals in a sustainable way, biofuel production, protein engineering, among many others. And so please feel free to explore all of these fantastic presentations in our YouTube channel. Just a few housekeeping announcements. Please feel free to type your questions in our Q&A box or in the chat section that I have activated for everyone. And I'm going to do my best to address as many questions as possible with the time that we have, which is 1 hour today. And if at the end of the session you have a question for either of the speakers, please address the speaker in your question. Okay, so today we're going to have two panelists, Dr. Raymond Kelly and Dr. Orlani Kanhar. And allow me to, we're going to open our presentation with, they're going to have a joint presentation, so I just need to share my screen 1 second. Dr. Raymond Kelly is Head of Research Support at Chagas in Ireland, and he's currently a member of the Impact 2030 Implementation Group at the Horizon Europe High-Level Group. Dr. Kelly is involved in all aspects of competitive research funding, from input to funding policy, as well as management and design of funding calls and increasing awareness of funding opportunities amongst researchers, while providing support to their applications. He's an expert reviewer for funding calls, contract negotiation, and post-award issues, and he currently represents the EU member states and associated countries on the International Bioeconomy Forum. And today he's going to be give us a talk about career development and funding opportunities for early career researchers. Since the talk is back-to-back, I'm going to present our second panelist, who is Dr. Orlani Kanhar. She's senior research officer at Chagas in Ireland, and she's currently the coordinator of the EU-funded REFRESCAR project. She coordinates and supports Chagas' involvement in EU and international research and innovation projects in the area of agriculture, food, and the wider bioeconomy. She engages in international cooperation and alignment activities, including the coordination of national research programs across Europe through EU-supported initiatives. She's a member of the Irish Bioeconomy Implementation Group and of the International Advisory Council on Global Bioeconomy, and she's as well going to be talking about career development and funding opportunity for early career researchers. So Dr. Kelly and Dr. Kanhar, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to present in our webinar series. And I'm just going to stop sharing my slides. Yeah, so the floor is all yours. So whenever you want, you can start presenting. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Evelyn, and thanks for the invitation. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, audio is good. Yes, perfect.
Okay, and you can see my slides?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Evelyn. So just to acknowledge at the start, a lot of these slides were prepared by our colleague, Dr. Rudy Rathore, so thanks very much to Rudy for that. Okay, so we're going to talk today about career planning and funding opportunities for early career researchers. So, right, your career planning isn't one decision or a single event. It's an ongoing process that draws on your experience and skills and will often bring you in many unexpected directions. And those unexpected directions are very much to be welcomed. So the planned happenstance theory was developed by Professor John Krumbolz and his colleagues in Stanford University. And in this theory, career is a lifelong experience, not something that is starts and finishes and is linear, but something that's actually continued and active throughout your life. And in this view, you can create opportunities by taking action on your curiosity and on chance events. And there's certain characteristics that will help you in this, and those are characteristics that you may have innately or that you can develop. So curiosity, are you open to exploring new learning opportunities? Are you interested in different aspects and different possibilities of things you could do with your career? Optimism. So do you view opportunities as possible and attainable? Persistence. Are you able to deal with obstacles? And I think I can pretty safely say anyone who's completed a PhD has shown huge persistence. There is no way you get to the end of a PhD and get submitted and get through your Viva without already having displayed huge persistence in your career. Flexibility. Are you able to address a variety of circumstances and events? And are you able to adapt to them as unexpected events occur? And then risk taking. So there's many different levels of risk taking we can take with our career, and everyone has a different risk appetite. So some people we hear about throw up their whole career and go off traveling the world for a year to try and figure out what they want to do and come back and do something completely different. Other people really like the security of a permanent state job and they never want to give that up. And then other people are somewhere in between that. But sometimes the biggest risk we take is being willing to try something new where we're not sure if we can do it. And we step in and take that task anyway and just give it a go. And that's sometimes the biggest risk we can take in life really is to open ourselves up to that possibility of failure. But it's very important to do it because it's only in doing that that we really grow. So, and behind everything is an open mind. So career paths. When I started out, I assumed there would be this linear career path, and I envisaged for myself an academic career whereby there'd be college and then a PhD and a postdoc and a lectureship and a senior lectureship and at some stage maybe a professorship. And I thought there'd be this perfectly linear path up to this great job. And but it rarely works out like that. And sometimes our career path looks a bit more like this where it's we go up and down and around and maybe sometimes end up back where we started. But eventually, if we persist and if we keep those characteristics I mentioned in the first slide available, so an open mind, persistence, optimism, and flexibility, we do eventually get to where we want to be. So there's lots of different career options for someone with a PhD. So if you're doing a PhD at the moment or you're doing a postdoc, you can stay in academia. And if you stay in academia, you could try to become a research officer in a research organization. So that could be the likes of Chagos or INRAE or Luca in Finland or ILVO in Belgium, where you'll conduct research full time. Or you could try to get a faculty position in a university where you'll do some teaching and also conduct some research. Or you could try and transfer to industry. And there's lots of jobs in industry. So it could be a senior scientist, a field application scientist. You could move sideways in industry. So right from the start, or maybe once you get into industry, then there's lots of opportunities to diversify within a company. So you could move into marketing or technical sales manager, regulatory affairs, and I'll actually come back to that later on. Um, or you could go into government. So the ministries employ lots of scientists. They could go in as a policymaker, you could go in as a scientific advisor or into regulation. And the other thing about government is in general, and it's in Ireland, but I think it's in many countries, is that they tend to aim for generalists rather than specialists. So you could go in on the basis of your PhD and your postdoc because you've fantastic analytical skills and logical thinking that are going to stand to you in any role. And then once you get in there, so you could go in as a policymaker or in a scientific capacity. But once you get into those roles, then there's plenty of room to diversify and to apply for different roles across the civil service and to expand your career options in that way. Or you could go and work for a funding agency as a scientific program manager who runs calls, gets reviewers, and manages funded projects. And then there are other fields. So a research support officer. So that's would be where myself and Orla fit in. Technology transfer industrial liaison officer that looks after the intellectual property and patents and in linkages with companies from a university. Science communication or technical writer and project manager. And then finally, but not finally, obviously, you could become an entrepreneur. That's either through startup or as a consultant. So there's huge opportunities for you as a scientist, and that's either staying within the science realm, the broader science realm, or moving out of it a little bit, but still using your skills that you've developed. So I did change career, or at least somewhat, and I'm going to go through a little bit of a personal journey now to tell you about the decisions I made, what influenced the decisions, and how I got to the job I have, so that might be useful. That experience that I gained from that might be useful to you. So in 2006, I found myself 28 years old. This is me. Honestly, that was quite stylish back then. So I had a BSc in biotechnology and a PhD in cell and molecular biology, and a postdoc. And yet, after 23 years in full-time education, I found myself a bit lost. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I was qualified for, that I could do. I knew I didn't want to continue as a postdoc, but really I didn't know what these 23 years of education had got given me, or where I could go with them, or what kind of career I could forge. Now, the good thing about being in a university is that there's universities are teeming with ideas. So there's always people giving talks, giving presentations, putting out new ideas, new ways of thinking, and you can really tap into that in a university. So as it happened at the time, there was a graduation ceremony, not for me, but for one of my friends, and there was a speaker at that ceremony, Professor Maureen Gaffney. She's a clinical psychologist, and she gave what a presentation or a talk to the graduates that really I found very inspiring. And I actually went back, the text is still up on the university website. I went back and looked at it last night, and it's still equally impressive. Not quite 20 years on, but maybe 16 or 17 years on. So she said that each and every one of us has been put into the world to do something unique, to make a difference, and to carve out a totally individual path. And your most important task in life is to find out what that is. So how do you identify that unique self? Well, you become aware of what really motivates you, you will always do willingly, with determination, with passion, with high energy, and when you don't count the time or effort involved. In other words, when you don't look at it as work, when you look at it as pleasure and enjoyment. And it's rarely one thing, but more often a combination of one or two qualities that you need to express. And that combination is your personal mission statement in life. And out of that flows the possibility of a way of being and living that's in harmony with your inner authentic self and will make a real difference in the world. And out of that will also flow all kinds of possibilities for work and professional life. Okay, so that gave me a kind of a place to start. So I needed to get to know myself. And I kind of thought back on things I had done in the past where, where I'd done them willingly without viewing them as work, where I'd done them with great energy. So when I was an undergraduate, I was very involved in running societies and organizing events for those societies. And when I was a PhD student, I had organized a departmental symposium and a peer supervision group for the PhDs and postdocs. I was also very interested in current affairs and politics. I like science and the scientific process, and I was good at writing, but I didn't like lab work and I didn't like long projects. I more enjoyed shorter projects where you can see results in days and weeks and months, as opposed to certainly for my PhD, when you didn't see results until years had passed. Um, so out of that self-reflection, I came up with three ideas for possible careers. One was regulatory affairs. That's where you work in a pharmaceutical company or a medical devices company and arrange for and look after the whole approval process from the likes of FDA in the US or the EMA in the EU. And that's very important for those companies. And they obviously they don't get a license to sell their products without that. It's quite high stress, but it works with a really strong attention to detail. Um, the other idea I had was consultancy. So this is the likes of McKinsey, or there's lots of others, Accenture, Deloitte as well, who go into an organization, spend a few months in there, and answer a particular question that that organization has. So they might be saying, should we invest in this country, or should we open a new branch, or should we move into this new area, or whatever it is. And the consultants come in and basically look at the evidence that's there for it, collect evidence, examine it, weigh it up, and present options to the company, maybe with a recommendation. So that also interests me. And the other area that interested me was staying in the university area and working in research support. So that was uh, that is the office in a university that helps people with their grant applications or funding applications, and I'll maybe describe that in a little bit more detail later. So those were the three areas I'd identified. So the next thing was to get out and talk to people. So for the research support, I basically just cold called a guy in the research support office in my university. I said, I see you're working in this area. I'm currently postdocing, but I'm looking to move careers. Would you be available to speak to me? And he was very generous with his time. And he said something to me that really clicked when I spoke to him. He said, I was okay as a postdoc, but I'm much better at research support than I ever was at research. And that really clicked with me because I didn't really feel I was very good at research at that stage, but I kind of felt, well, this is something that I could be good at. Then I spoke to a manager of a research center. She was incredibly generous with her time. Afterwards, she sent me on her CV that she'd used to apply for that job, and she asked me to send on my CV. She read my CV and got back to me with suggested changes. And then for the regulatory affairs, I spoke to an old college friend of mine who was working in that area. So for the consultancy, I didn't know anybody, so there was nobody to, and I didn't have, or I didn't feel I'd any connection to access somebody in that area. With the benefit of hindsight now and with new technology, this was before LinkedIn was a big thing. If it was now, I'd just look up LinkedIn, look up those companies, find people that work for them, and just start messaging them and explain myself. And generally, I found if you ask people for assistance, they're more than happy to give it, or at least the majority are. You'd be incredibly surprised at how generous people are with this. So then it was a matter of apply, apply, apply again. So I must have submitted, I don't know, like maybe 80, 90, 100 applications to pharmaceutical and medical device companies looking for jobs. And I either got no response or got a clean no. And in the end, I was talking to that friend from college who was working in regulatory affairs, and I told her that I'd applied to her company and hadn't had any, I think I hadn't even gotten a response. And she knew that they were recruiting. She said, "Send in your CV, send me your CV." And I sent it to her, and she sent it up to her boss. Her boss looked at it and said, "Oh yeah, that's grand. Bring him in for an interview." I went in for an interview. 3 interviews later, they offered me a job. So what I realized at that point is it's sometimes hard to get past big company HR. HR are HR specialists, they're not scientists. So when they have to filter through loads of CVs, what they do is they look and they look for very relevant experience, and they're literally looking for the words. So if they're looking for a job in regulatory affairs, they're scanning the CVs. Does this guy have experience in regulatory affairs? If they don't see the word regulatory affairs, it's gone. Whereas then the actual manager who was in the place was able to see, okay, this guy has an undergrad, he's a PhD, he's working in the science area. My science or my PhD was in the area of human biology, so I got all that. They were able to see it in a different way. But sometimes you need to find a way to get past that big company HR. And at least the main lesson I would say is apply, apply, apply again, but also start refining and start thinking. If you're not getting anywhere, you need to find a different approach. And that was the approach I found there. Anyway, through all that, I was also applying for jobs in research support, and I found myself at some point with two options. So I could go into a job in research support or stay in regulatory, or not stay in regulatory affairs, go into a job in regulatory affairs. And I thought back to Maureen Gaffney, and I thought, which of these jobs would I do if I wasn't getting paid for it? And I answered that question very quickly. So it was clear to me I would still be interested in doing a research support job, and probably not doing the regulatory affairs job. The regulatory affairs job was probably something I was just doing for money, and that's not a bad thing either, because at 28 years of age, I was I needed to earn some money. I've been a long time surviving on very little, so there's no it's not a bad characteristic to want to earn some money, but in the end I chose the research support job. So I started in DCU, and one thing I would say is when you're at an entry stage in a position, take every opportunity that comes up. So every door you open, every opportunity you take presents another three doors or another three opportunities. So take every opportunity that comes your way. Volunteer, put yourself out there and get involved, because that's what's going to give you options later on. And at a future stage, you can start pruning those back and focusing on areas where you're strong. But at that early stage, you should just throw yourself into everything that comes, because you don't know in advance which of those areas you're going to find a natural affinity for. Okay, so what did I learn and what would I advise? Understand yourself, what you like and don't like, your strengths and weaknesses. Don't view weaknesses as a problem, just be aware of them. If you're weak in an area, you do have the option of trying to grow into that area, or you do have the option of saying, okay, I'm going to focus on a career where that area isn't as important. Ask people nicely for help. People are generally very happy to assist. Do thank them afterwards. Be conscious that you're using their time. Be aware of that, but don't be shy about asking, because people are very generous. Apply, 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 but learn as you go. If you're not getting anywhere with the applications, you need to look and see, is there a different route that I can use here. Consider asking for work experience. So if you really want to get into an area and you don't have experience in it, it's very hard with no experience at all. I would consider working for a month for free. It's not ideal, it's not wonderful, but to get that first bit of experience, I think it's worthwhile, and that's something that I was considering doing before I got the offer of my first job in research support. I had it as a backup plan that I would go into the university and offer to work for free for a month. Um, if you're changing areas, temporary jobs are also easier to get. So at the moment, say in our office, I know if we have a permanent job, we'd be very reluctant to hire someone in that didn't have relevant experience. But if we had a temporary job, like a maternity leave cover or a sick leave cover, we might be more flexible and willing to take a chance, because it's only for a short time. So if you're changing areas and you're a bit of a risk for an employer, those temporary jobs will be easier to get. Um, Take all the opportunities that come. That's what I was saying about every opportunity that comes at an early stage in your career, try and take it, because it will give you more opportunities, and you don't know yet where your precise strengths are. Get a career mentor. Most of our and We aim that all of our team will have a career mentor. So that's somebody outside the organization who's able to give you advice on your career, meet you maybe twice a year, three times a year. It should be someone who's maybe kind of two positions senior to where you are. So not somebody that's miles away from where you are, because there'd be too much of a disconnect, and not somebody that's too close, because they don't have the perspective that you need. But maybe about two positions up from where you are, and that will allow them to give you advice in your career. And you'd be surprised, the people you'll ask, 9 times out of 10, people have been extremely generous with their time. If you want to go into the area of research management, project management in science, research administration, research support, any of those areas, there's an organization, EARMA, the European Association of Research Managers and Administrators. A very good organization. They're having their annual conference coming up in the next week or two. So they're well worth joining them, and they provide lots of information and lots of interesting courses and conferences and all of that. Okay, so finally, if you want to stay in academia, um, then that's a different route. So you've two options. Basically, you can apply for your own postdoc funding, or you can apply for a postdoc position which has been advertised by a principal investigator. As at an early stage, if you're just out of your PhD, you're more likely to apply for a postdoc funding. If you've done one or two postdocs already, it will be better to try and move into. Sorry, if you're just out of your PhD, you'd be applying for a position advertised by a PI. But if you've done one or two postdocs under the supervision of a PI, you should be looking to apply for your own funding where you're in charge of the project, and ideally you might be even supervising a student. And that grows your independence. What should you look for? Well, it really depends on your preference. So some people would like a lot of attention from their supervisor. Other people would like freedom to work so that they meet their supervisor now and again, but they're just free to get on with it without too much interference. Some people like a small team. Some people like a larger team. Some people like an established researcher, like maybe at the lecturer level, senior lecturer level, assistant professor. Some people would like a leading researcher. More likely the leading researcher is going to give you a bit less of their time, whereas an established researcher, so like a lecturer, senior lecturer, assistant professor, is more likely to give you maybe more of their time. Some people like great academic output, like publications. Other people are looking for industry links. You may want to be part of a very productive lab where you work very hard but get loads of results, or you may want a good work-life balance. The organization status might be important to you, or the supervisor's profile might be more important to you. So you might be happy to go to a small university with a very a big research star versus a very prestigious organization. And you might want a longer postdoc or a shorter postdoc, or be willing to tolerate a shorter postdoc, but with an exciting topic. So they're all different things you need to think about. And then that comes back again to knowing yourself and knowing what you want, and knowing your own priorities. Okay, so that's me finished for the moment. I'm going to hand over to Orla. I will stop sharing.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just sharing my screen, and hopefully everybody can see it okay and hear me okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks very much to both Evelyn and Ray. My name is Orla Nakor, as mentioned, and I work in Ray's team in Teagasc in the Research Support Office. So Ray has covered the career development aspects, I suppose, of our presentation. I'm now going to look more so into funding and various opportunities that might be available to you if you decide to stay in an academic career. So I've kind of broken it down into 4 stages to structure the presentation and to present the opportunities that are available to you at those particular stages. So at stage 1, you might be a PhD student. So you're working on your project, working on your thesis. What kind of funding opportunities are available to you? Really here, the focus is on building up your CV. So you might consider funding opportunities in terms of travel, in terms of attending a conference or workshop. And really there are lots of options there. So these would be small grants, for example, for travel, for an event, as I mentioned. There are also funding opportunities in terms of access to infrastructure. There might be prizes or awards that are given out, for example, best poster presentation, best overall presentation at different conferences. All of these things help to distinguish you from other people and help to build up your CV. You can also build up your experience in terms of any committees that exist within your organisation, or indeed outside of the organisation. You might offer to review papers in a journal, or you might decide to engage in public outreach activities, and I'll give some examples of those in a minute. And other opportunities then would be, for example, to register as a Horizon Europe expert reviewer, and I'll speak a little bit about that also. But all of these initiatives really are a way for you to distinguish yourself from others, to stand out from the crowd, to build up your CV so that you have a greater story to tell. So starting with the travel grants, just some examples. These are really just a couple from a vast field of different funding opportunities that are there for travel grants. So there are grants that are provided by different organizations, by different foundations, for example, the Bayer Foundation, by different funders in different countries. So there are examples there from Germany, or for example, the Fulbright program, which supports a US interaction with different countries around the world. So there's really huge number of travel grants available depending on the topic area that you're working in, but also the country that you're living in, and also different charitable organizations that provide such funding opportunities. So these are just a few examples that might be of interest. And I talked about public outreach activities previously. So just to give you some examples from within Teagasc, in Ireland, we have a national competition, science competition for both secondary and primary school students. So the BT Young Scientists, and then the Science Blast is for primary school students. We also have a Science Week that happens every year where there's a huge promotion and activity around science. And these are all activities that Teagasc researchers are involved in. We also have a research, Research magazine that comes out every quarter that provides information on Teagasc research activities for the general public. There's also our national broadcaster, RTE, has a facility where you can write articles for the public about particular research topics. And then, of course, there's opportunities in terms of social media, podcasts, and we also have a number of open days in Teagasc where farmers and different stakeholders come in and work with and discuss topics with researchers in Teagasc. So these are just examples within our organisation, but within your organisation and your country, there will also be such initiatives that you could get involved in. And then at the European level, there are also various initiatives around Mary Sklodowsky-Curie, the European Researchers' Night. The European Commission organised a Science is Wonderful exhibition previously. There are initiatives at the regional level. There are initiatives to meet scientists. All of these are ideas for you to get involved in and to help to build up your CV and to tell a good story. And then the other thing I mentioned was around registering as a Horizon Europe expert evaluator. So Horizon Europe is the European Commission's framework programme for research and innovation. And there are thousands of calls in that programme. And for each of those calls, they need a number of evaluators. So you as a researcher can register as an expert. You upload information about your experience and your profile and the topics that you are expert in. And it's important to keep your information up to date, whether that's on ORCID or ResearchGate or Google Scholar, because people looking for experts will use those resources to get more information on you. But after you register and make sure to keep your profile up to date, the Commission will then contact relevant people to bring them on board as evaluators of proposals. And that's really an invaluable way to see what funding agencies are looking for in terms of a successful proposal. Okay, so we've talked about that stage one, while you're a PhD student and your focus really is on building up your CV. Then as you start to think about the life after PhD, postdoc funding, you can, I suppose, already in your second or last year as a PhD, you start to think about various opportunities afterwards. So Ray mentioned some of these already in terms of advertised postdoc positions, but there's also fellowships available, for example, the MSCA postdoctoral fellowships, which I'll talk about in a bit of detail. EMBO has postdoctoral fellowships also. But really here, the focus is on building up your experience. So you have the academic qualification, and now you want to build up your experience as a researcher. So just to introduce Marie Sklodowsky-Curie postdoctoral fellowships, you'll see the Marie Curie programme here on the left under Pillar 1. So Horizon Europe has 3 broad pillars. Pillar 1 is the pillar that focuses on excellent science. So it's really about building the careers of researchers, about funding cutting edge research, and about supporting research infrastructures across Europe and beyond. So that's where the Marie Sklodowsky-Curie actions fit in. And the key features of Marie Sklodowsky-Curie actions are there's a very strong focus on researchers' training, skills and career development at all stages. Excellent research is important. So it's important that the topic and the work that you plan to do is excellent. It has to be, top class. But the focus is on a bottom bottom-up approach. So the Commission don't say we want applications in integrated pest management, for example. It's not prescribed. It's completely open. So you can decide the topic that you research in your postdoctoral fellowship. There's also a strong focus on international, cross-sectoral and interdisciplinary mobility. So they're really 3 key features of the programme. So you have to move. There's the physical mobility of research is a key feature of this programme. The programme does provide attractive working and employment conditions, and it also supports the structuring impact on organisations through excellent programmes and connecting organisations across Europe and beyond. And there's also a strong collaboration with industry and SMEs encouraged in the programme. So there are 5 main areas under Marie Curie. Doctoral networks is about doctoral programmes. Staff exchanges is support for researchers and indeed other staff members to visit organisations outside of their own and exchange in terms of their work. The co-fund programme provides co-funding for doctoral and postdoctoral programmes. And then there's a whole area in terms of outreach and citizens and the European Researchers' Night. But the one I'm going to focus on today is the postdoctoral fellowships, because this is open to anyone of any nationality worldwide. It really is postdoctoral fellowships for excellent postdocs in all fields of research. So it's everything from arts to zoology. And really the objectives here are to foster excellence through implementation of research projects, to enhance the creative and innovative potential of researchers holding a PhD, to focus on those 3 I's, international, intersectoral and interdisciplinary mobility, and to bridge and provide exposure to the non-academic sector. And career development is really a very strong part of the programme. So what's involved is a joint application by you, a researcher and a beneficiary organisation in Europe, in the academic or indeed the non-academic sector. So you find a research organisation to work with, a mentor there, a supervisor there, and you write the application together. So again, to emphasise, it's bottom up, you decide the topic, and it's different to other research proposals in that these are training fellowships. So it's more than just research. It's really very important that the training and development of the researcher is considered and supported through the fellowship. The next call has a deadline in September of this year. It usually takes place in September. And then if that's too early for you, there is a call expected in September of 2025. So just to explain, there are 2 types of MSCA postdoctoral fellowships. The first is a European fellowship. So this lasts 1 to 2 years. And this is where a researcher of any nationality, so European or outside of Europe, moves to a European member state or associated country to conduct their fellowship of 1 year to 2 years. And then there's a global fellowship. So this is where you have that 1 to 2 year fellowship at the beginning, but there's also a 12-month returns phase. So it is open to people of European citizens, long-term European citizens, or of member states or associated countries, and they go outside of Europe to a third country for 1 to 2 years, and then there's a mandatory 12-month return phase back to a European member state or associated country for the last phase of their fellowship. So they're the 2 types of fellowships that exist. Again, all fields of research are covered, and there are 8 scientific panels under which you submit your application. So just to mention then some criteria to give you an idea of what makes you eligible or not. For the European fellowships, as I mentioned, any nationality worldwide is eligible, whereas for the global fellowships, it should be a national or a long-term resident of an EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country. The mobility eligibility criteria is critical, so you must not have resided or carried out your main activity, work or studies in the country of the beneficiary for your European fellowship or the country of the host organisation for the outgoing phase of the global fellowship for more than 12 months in the previous 6 months before the call deadline. And you do have to calculate like that up to the day. So if you've been in a country for more than 12 months out of the 3 years prior to the call deadline, then that would rule you out of applying for a fellowship in that country. In terms of qualifications, you have to have a doctoral degree or you have to have successfully defended your PhD, and there's some rules around that I've put down at the bottom of this slide. In terms of research experience, you can have up to a maximum of 8 years research experience after your PhD. They do take into account exceptions, so career breaks, maternity leave, sick leave, all of that will be considered, and there's a tool there that the Commission provide to calculate your years of research experience. And they do have a rule around resubmission, so you can resubmit your proposal if it's not successful in a particular year, but only if you received a score greater than 70%. So if it's less than 70%, you can't resubmit the same proposal with the same host organisation in the subsequent year. And then two other aspects to mention, because there is, as I said, a strong focus on working with industry or working with non-governmental organisations or the non-academic sector. So you can, as part of your fellowship, undertake a secondment. So that could be worldwide. It could be in a non-academic or an academic sector. And it can be any time during your fellowship, except for the global fellowship. So it can only be during your outgoing phase. It can be up to a third of the duration of the fellowship in one period or in multiple periods that are broken up. And you don't need a letter of commitment for that. Then there's also a non-academic placement. So this is only to EU member states or associated countries, and it's only obviously to non-academic organisations. And this takes place after your standard fellowship period has ended. So you can go to a non-academic organisation for a maximum of 6 months in a single placement after your standard fellowship ends, and you will need a letter of commitment from the host organisation for your proposal. So that's a very brief introduction into the Marie Skłodowska-Curie postdoctoral fellowships. They're a really fantastic way of gaining experience, and also very well regarded and respected internationally if you are successful in obtaining one of these. And the proposal is only 10 pages, so it's less daunting than other research proposals. So you do have a lot to fit into those 10 pages, but it isn't the most daunting in terms of the length of the application. So just to mention two other postdoc fellowship opportunities that might be of interest. So apart from the MSCA postdoctoral fellowships, there are also MSCA co-fund fellowships. So this is where a fellowship is co-funded by the European Commission and an entity based in an EU member state or associated country. So it might be a government agency or a government entity, it might be a funding agency. And I suppose the aspects of the fellowship are similar in some ways to the Marie Skłodowska-Curie postdoctoral fellowships, in that mobility is key. The rules might be slightly different though, so you have to check the rules for each opportunity to make sure that you're in line with the eligibility rules. They offer fellowships of duration between 1 and 3 years, and EURAXESS is really the best resource to look up current opportunities for postdocs in those areas. And then, for example, EMBO has postdoctoral fellowships of maximum 2 years. Again, mobility is key, and they offer a 1 to 2 year fellowship, and they do provide various allowances for childcare, for relocation expenses. And they also support your training. So there are leadership courses, and there's a network for the fellows. But they don't cover overheads, bench fees, consumables. So just to be aware of those kind of aspects when you're costing out your application. And the link is provided there to that funding opportunity. And there's lots more. These are just a few examples that I came up with that might be relevant to a broad group of researchers, but there are lots more, including national funding opportunities for you as a researcher. So how do you find information about funding schemes in different countries? So I mentioned EURAXESS already. This is really a very important platform to facilitate researchers in terms of their mobility, their career development, any job opportunities that exist, and also about your rights as a researcher. So EURAXESS is a network of 43 countries, but there are also 9 worldwide hubs. So there's support for people from outside of Europe also. So if you want to find funding opportunities in a particular country in Europe, if you Google EURAXESS and the country, for example, EURAXESS Germany, it'll take you to the website for EURAXESS Germany, and you'll be able to find a huge amount of information on opportunities in that country. The other resource that is often mentioned is Research Professionals. So this is an online database of research funding opportunities worldwide across all disciplines. There's also information there about research policy developments and updates and news. You do need an institutional membership, so your university or research organisation would have to have a membership in order for you to gain access to that information. And then the other one to mention is Scientify Research. So this is a portal. It's an open access research grants database for researchers worldwide. So you can go in there and filter by subject area, by host location, by the type of grant, by your nationality. They do have different versions. So there's a free version that has more limited filter options, and but then there's also a paid membership where you'd have a lot more filter options, and you'd also get immediate access to the information and also tailored grant alerts. So it really depends whether you want to just use the free version or to pay for it if you so wish. But there are 3 important resources in terms of getting more information about funding opportunities for you. And then to mention also about COST in Europe. So COST is the European, it's an initiative in terms of European coordination in science and technology. And as a postdoctoral fellow, you are eligible to register as an expert within COST. So COST actions are pan-European, bottom-up science and technology networks open to researchers from academia and industry or to policy stakeholders supporting new ideas and knowledge sharing. So what COST does is it supports networking activities carried out within COST actions, and they do highlight the transdisciplinary nature of these actions. So it's not funding for research projects, it's funding for networking of researchers and people involved in research in a particular topic area. So you have 3 options. You could join an existing COST action. So you can go to the COST website and see what actions have already been approved. If there's a particular one in an area, for example, integrated pest management that I mentioned earlier, you can, if that's something of interest to you, you can then contact the management committee of the COST action, or if there's no management committee, then you can contact the national coordinator for COST in your country. So that's one option to join an existing COST action. You could also, if there is a topic area that hasn't been addressed by a topic action or by a COST action, you could submit a proposal for a new COST action. So there's a continuous call that's open, and the next collection date is in October. So you submit a proposal for a new COST action in a particular topic. You submit that online, and then it's evaluated. And if successful, you would receive money to network with other researchers in that area. And then the other option is to become an external expert. So similar to the Horizon Europe evaluators, you could register as an expert and contribute to the evaluation of COST proposals. You could participate in the assessment of COST action results and outcomes, or you could contribute to the impact and success of the COST programme. So there are different options within COST for you as a postdoctoral researcher to gain experience and again to build up your CV. So you've completed maybe that initial postdoc position after you obtained your PhD. I suppose then as you transition to an independent researcher, you might, if you haven't already applied for a MSc postdoctoral fellowship, you might look at you might go for that, or you might look at other programs that are supporting talented postdocs. For example, in Ireland, we have the SFI-IRC Pathway Programme. And this is a programme that supports upcoming researchers, and the support also for them to have a PhD student working on their project. So it's transitioning to independence, and it's you starting to build up your career and to start to build a team around you in your research area. And once you have, I suppose, completed that stage, the next stage really is about moving towards excellence, building up your team. So at the European level, you have the European Research Council Starting Grant Award. So this is really for excellent researchers that are working in areas that are cutting edge, that can really advance the frontiers of science in a particular area. So there's support for them for their own salary, or for the salaries of a team around them to work on a particular topic. Or, for example, there's the Royal Society SFI University Research Fellowship that's in Ireland and the UK. That's just another example. But it's really then about at that stage about building up your team and looking at opportunities to be independent and to have a team around you working on your research topic. So I just wanted to mention a bit about proposal development as well, because no matter what call you're applying for, this will be important. So some suggestions for proposal writing. If not all of funders ask for a proposal abstract and some keywords. So these are really important, and you might not have much time to do them towards the end of your application, but they are important because reviewers are selected based on the information that you provide in the abstract and the keywords. So spend a little bit of time, thinking about them and selecting the words that are most relevant. Write in a direct style. So I suppose in terms of scientific writing, it's important to be direct, to use simple language, and to try to avoid lengthy sentences because you want to convey your information succinctly and in a way that reviewers will be easily able to understand. In terms of the research questions, you need to clearly communicate these and not to try to address everything, not look for the sun, the moon, and the stars. You have to really focus on 3 or 4 key questions or objectives in your proposal and clearly communicate what you aim to achieve in this research project. In terms of the methodology, it needs to be clear, but it also needs to be suitable for addressing the research question. So that will be something that the reviewers will evaluate, whether the proposed methodology is appropriate to the research questions. And then impact. This is huge at a European level. It's also huge in many countries. You really need to think about the value of your project in terms of stakeholders. What is the expected impact of your research? This is all public money, so funders need to demonstrate the value of investing in research. So you need to think about the relationship between your project, your objectives and activities, the outputs that will come from your project, and what they mean for stakeholders and end users. And then really think about what the funder is looking for. So in particular, the evaluation criteria. And at a Horizon Europe level, for example, the evaluation criteria are provided. So it's easy for you to know in broad terms, what the evaluators are looking for. It's also a good idea to ask a scientific colleague not involved in the project to review your proposal against these criteria and to try and see things that maybe you don't see after working on it for a long period of time. And as I said, yeah, the Horizon Europe, the evaluation form is available online. So that's definitely worth looking at if you're going to, for example, submit a Marie Skłodowska-Curie postdoctoral fellowship. Use diagrams and charts where available or where relevant to explain complex matters and to break up text with subheading. So if you're an evaluator and you have to review 20 proposals, the easier it is to read the proposal, the better, and the more positive the evaluator will feel about your application. So definitely diagrams, and there's loads of resources now available to really create nice graphics and diagrams, and also just to break it up with different headings and to make it look nice visually so that it's easy for somebody to read. And then really it's not about just one draft and submit. It's really about drafting, rewriting, talking to colleagues, getting their views, and again rewriting, and focus on clear concepts, a logical flow. So there should be a progression through the application, and spell check is important because all of that contributes to I suppose the impression that the evaluator is given from your application. So really focus on what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, and that links to impact, and then how you're going to do it, and be very clear about those 3 things. And I suppose we would advise, you might want to look at many different funding opportunities, but really you can only focus well on one funding application at any one time. So if you're thinking about 2 or 3 different funding applications, really it's best to put your efforts into one, do that as well as you can, and hopefully that will be successful, rather than doing maybe a less good job on several funding applications. And what kind of supports are available to you as a researcher in your university or in your research organisation? The Research Support Office provides advice on the most appropriate type of grant to apply for. They provide advice on funding agency rules and regulations. They can create linkages with you and people who have been previously successful in a particular funding scheme. They could also, for example, provide access to successful grant applications that colleagues have written. And sometimes they can provide a pre-read of your application themselves, or they can engage an external consultant with experience in reviewing proposals that could provide inputs and an assessment of your draft application. So it's really a good idea to talk to your research support office in your organisation or your university to get some advice. That's their job. And then I suppose the closing remark is to say that you might not be successful your first time. Most people are not, I suppose. So it's about what Ray mentioned earlier about perseverance and persistence. And so if it doesn't work the first time, don't be disheartened. Keep applying, talk to people in your area, talk to the researchers, talk to research support. And talk to your colleagues and talk to a mentor if you can organise one, and keep at it, and eventually it will be successful. So I'll finish there, Evelyn, and thanks everybody for your attention, and we're happy to take any questions if there are some.
Thank you so much, Ray and Orla, for your presentations. I'm pretty sure that in the case of Ray, thanks for the history of your experience. I'm pretty sure it resonates with many people, including me. and for Orla, thank you for so many tools and resources that you have given us to kind of enhance our CV and then search for resources, because there's so much that is kind of overwhelming. So yeah, so let's go here. I have a question in the chat here. So yes, just remind people, use the Q&A box and the chat section to put your questions. So I'm gonna go through to some of them now. So a person asked, I am at the stage where I have to decide between two different paths. One is to stay in academia and other is to move into industry. I have no experience of working with industry, but I have worked at a lab scale level. Secondly, the job is far away from my country. Should I take the risk and avail this opportunity, or stick to the academia where I have to only teach undergrad students? So who would like to maybe answer that?
Well, I've been looking at that for a few minutes while Orla was talking, so maybe I've had a little bit of time to think about that. What I'd say is that's a very personal decision, and only you can make that decision. But what you need to do is you need to go out and get information. So I suppose the first thing is to reflect back and as I mentioned earlier, get to know yourself. So when you think of traveling away to work, is that something that's very exciting and you have that kind of normal bit of fear of something new, or is it something that you really don't like the thought of, that you're really a kind of a person who would prefer to stay in your home country? So you need to know that and figure that out about yourself. Consider your own career stage. If you're quite and your life stage, if you're quite an early stage, or maybe don't have particular commitments, then that might be quite exciting, and you have some room to travel for a year or two, and even if it doesn't work out, to still come back and go back to what you have been doing in the academic side. If you're maybe tied with personal commitments, or maybe at a more advanced career stage, then maybe taking a risk is a little bit more, you've a little bit more to lose. I would talk to friends in industry, as you don't have experience directly in industry. I think it would be good to get that perspective, to talk to people who are already working in industry and how they find it, and to describe how they work and their kind of normal working day or their normal working week, to get a feel for what that would be like, so that you can, make a more informed decision. If you don't know people working in industry, or even if you do, but you're wondering about that particular company, you can just look up that company on LinkedIn, and it'll list all the employees that are also on LinkedIn that have affiliated with that company. And you can contact those people and ask them, well, what's it like working in that company? What's the culture like? What's your average day like? And people, maybe not everyone will respond, but if you contact a few people, my guess is that you will get some responses. And then I suppose also consider what you want to do long term. So you applied for an industry job, which suggests to me that at some level anyway, you're curious about what it would be like to work in industry. So do you have a vision for where you want to be? You already know academia, so you know how much you like that. Is that something you would be very happy to still do? Where you mentioned, I stick in academia where I only have to teach the undergrad students? Well, you're probably already doing that. So what's that like? Is that something you really enjoy? And the industry thing is just a kind of a thing you feel you should do? If it's something you're already enjoying and it's still satisfying and you could imagine it being satisfying in 10 or 20 years' time, then I think it's perfectly fine to stick with that. If it's something where you're already getting a little bit, have the feeling that it's not challenging enough or not really engaging you, then maybe that's something that's going to prompt you to jump for industry. But it's very much particular to you. But what I'd suggest at the moment is that you go out and get more information, including and maybe also go in and get more information. So part of that information is already in your own mind, and part of it is from outside. And when you've that more information, you'll be able to make a more informed choice.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Ray. So we have another question here. This may be for Orla. It says, do you think having a postdoc helps if we are planning to move to industry? Will it give an upper hand? Or maybe both of you have like a perspective on this.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on the role in the industry. There's a whole array of job positions within industry, so it really depends on that particular job. But certainly, if it's a role that requires a scientific leadership, scientific input, I certainly think a postdoc would, if it's relevant, obviously, would give an upper hand. But it really depends on the position within the industry, and the particular company.
Okay, so we have a very interesting one here. It says, I have established an independent agricultural research company called Golden Valley Research in Tipperary. Is there an organization I could speak to review a grant application? Whoever would like to take the question.
Oh yeah, congratulations for setting up your own company. That's a great achievement. Yeah, in Ireland there are several different consultants and companies that can support proposal writing, and also review applications. So for example, there's a company called Aaron. There's a company led by Catherine Halbert that can review proposals. There's also a company called Neofund. So these are all consultants that provide services to review proposals and help you to redraft and target your proposal for the particular funding call.
Okay, that's good to know. Like, so it's like independent to, let's say, Chagas. They have like a service, they provide the service.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So we have other one here. It says, industry sometimes wants postdoc activities, not only PhD and or PhD with working experience. Does postdoc would be accepted as working experience? I guess that depends on the company. But yeah. So is they're asking if the postdoc would be
it really depends on the role. I mean, it's you know, as Orla said, if you're moving into a research area in a company, then postdocing in that area would be very helpful. If you're moving into something that's out of research, then my advice would be to get into industry as soon as possible. Really, like what I found, what was ruining my CV at the time that I was applying was I was just out of a PhD doing a postdoc. I spent all my time in a university, and they thought this guy has no practical experience. What do we have faith that he'll be actually able to work in a company? So it depends on the role you're going for in a company. If you're going into a more generalist role or moving out of research, out of company research, then I would suggest getting in early is better.
Okay, yeah. We have somebody's asking, could we apply for Horizon and cost expert position? I imagine is the expert reviewer only with PhD. So is that allowed? So if you have PhD, can you apply for that to be an expert reviewer?
Expert positions. So if you're talking about evaluators of Horizon proposals and cost proposal, yes, you can apply with just a PhD. So you don't have to be a professor of 20 years. Now, maybe you might not be as competitive as somebody of 20 years, but maybe you will also have more free time to do evaluation of proposals. So yes, you can certainly apply to be an expert evaluator with a PhD.
Okay, so we have more questions coming, but this is going to be the last one because we are out of time. So it says that does Chagas offer any internship or mentorship programs for people who would like to venture into research support / administration roles?
We don't have any formal programs on that, but look, I'd say if you're interested in getting into that role, you could get in contact with us, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Yeah.
One last message I'd like to say,
Yeah.
just to add, is when you do have this successful career, consider paying it forward. So you can't really pay back the people that have helped you in your career, and likely there's a lot of people that will have helped you get to where you are. So they're not interested in being paid back, but you can pay it forward to the next generation. So if you do have the opportunity in future to help other people with their career, please do consider doing it, because it can make a small bit of help from you, an hour here or an hour there, can make a huge difference to other people's careers. And I think we've all benefited from that over the years. So do consider paying it forward if you can.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. I just want to mention at last that I have received questions about this. So the webinar is going to be available in YouTube probably today, like in a few hours. I will upload it. And so we have more questions coming. So I will collect the questions and we will kind of go through them, and I probably put the answers in the description of the video if that's something that we could do. So I want to say thank you to Dr. Kelly and Dr. Nick Honagar for like very insightful and informative presentations. Like it's been like really great. And thank you everyone for your questions and for joining our webinar once again. And we're going to start a new webinar series in sustainable food systems, and I'll be sending emails and publicity about this. Probably I'll start tomorrow. So thank you everyone, and goodbye and have a wonderful day. Bye everyone.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Evan.
Bye.